the video that just started. So you guys are reading an SAT passage, and you're simply writing down what you're noticing that's difficult for our kids, and what the implications are for instruction. Haven't looked at the questions yet. You're going to want to look at the questions real quick. You could just put in 10-minute timer in Google and it'll pop 10-minute timer just like that. So here's what you're going to do, guys. You're going to just run and talk to somebody near you. It doesn't matter if they read the same passage. Go ahead and share what you thought was really, really difficult. What would be difficult for our kids. And they all take the ACT. But don't stop there. You guys come up with some stuff that you feel like, okay, so here's what it means about our teaching. Because that's what we're going to share in a minute, all right? So y'all go ahead and turn us off. one group mentioned something you got. Maybe you could pick another difficulty. Difficulties, what are they?
Combinations of answers.
What do you mean by that, Renee?
Like 1 and 3, 2 and 4. 1 only.
Combo answers. Okay, like 1 and 4. All right, what else?
Too long.
The whole passage is too long?
Yes.
Way too long. And it makes kids want to give up before they even start reading. Okay.
It's boring what they're reading.
Okay?
I'm sorry for lack of a better way.
Yeah.
It's not exciting. I mean, I did the guys, but I looked at the others and I went, ugh.
Yeah. And that's how they feel too. Okay, what else?
No previous background knowledge.
No background knowledge. Star that one. Okay. Tom, did you have something?
We were just saying that the answer itself isn't in the passage, it requires a different level of you have to.
Inferencing to find answers instead of they're not right there kind of questions. Not right there. Okay, good.
And it's more than that. I think it's also, they're all higher level, higher order level questions. There's no regurgitated answer, I guess, same idea.
Hey, I'll take that higher order thinking.
All right,
Okay, what else?
Not enough time.
Not enough time to read it? Yeah, so your kids would have had longer than that, but yes.
But
Okay.
the time constraint itself made us nervous. It made us feel anxious.
Okay, well, sorry.
No, that's all right. But that, I mean,
I hope your kids
they
would
would
feel that
also.
same way. But you're right about this. I don't have enough time to read those long passages, and because they don't do, let's face it, they don't do that kind of long reading. They get tired on a regular basis. They actually have to build their reading muscles the way you would physically. They need to be reading longer passages more often if they're going to sit down and tackle them. And so let's talk about our teaching implications. First, for how long they are. And this also has to do with time. You know, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so one of the biggest things that we can teach kids to do is to chunk text. And as a teacher, we can do it for them, but eventually they should be able to do that themselves. You put it into small bites with a line, if you can, if you can actually write on it, and only read one section at a time. And stop and summarize as you go in the margins. Annotate. We've talked about this when we did the, we've talked about annotating a lot, but most recently when we did the New Zella workshop. And you can annotate really well with your smartboard. So y'all know you can pull up any website, anything online, and use your markers and write right on the board. You can do your annotating easily that way. What about for no background knowledge? There's all kinds of pre-activities. We've talked about them for years. I know the Lit team's talked about them for years to help build background knowledge. But the fact is, we're all going to encounter information, and in our lifetime, whether it be college or career, that nobody can help us with, and nobody can say, hey, have you ever done so and so? You know what I'm saying? We've got to teach our kids to take boring text and tackle it, whether they like it or not. And so really the first strategy is to get them to chunk it and to get them to summarize every piece. And if it's boring and they find their minds wandering, we've got to teach them that it's okay to go back and reread until you are able to summarize. Can you guys think of other things we can do in the classroom to address these really significant difficulties our kids are having?
Annotating. Oh, you've got that up.
Yeah, but I'm going to put a star because it is. It's very, very important. And on a regular basis. And if they're not reading on a regular basis, they're not annotating on a regular basis.
Show them how to find context clues.
Good. Exercises on context clues. So, are you referring to them finding answers to questions, or because of vocab is difficult, or both? So did we say vocab? We haven't said that yet. I heard some of y'all are saying how hard the vocab was. So don't forget the strategies we've been talking about, like have your kids skim over a passage first, pick out the words that are truly difficult. If they can't learn from a partner what they mean, the teacher can directly teach them. I know you don't have that during the ACT, but that's how you can get kids to know, oh, I need to skim over first for hard words to try to figure them out. Do the context clues. Now, as the teacher, you know what you're going to assign, so you can pick out the words you think they're going to have a hard time with too, and directly teach them. Some of those words you don't even need to bother with because they're not going to interfere with the reading. But if they are, then yeah, directly teach them. But if we throw text at them and don't spend any time talking about vocab, they're never going to look for hard vocab and deal with it as a reader. One thing we haven't put up here is model and read aloud, and that's a biggie. And I've sent y'all some stuff about reading aloud this year in my instructional framework tips in the email. You're the best reader, so why don't you read the first paragraph, read it out loud, and think out loud what you're doing. Think out loud when you've got to go back and kind of summarize or ask a question. That is so powerful. And then set them off with a partner to do it themselves and read a paragraph at a time and talk and think out loud with a partner and summarize with a sticky note on each paragraph. So you modeling is very important. And y'all, we are not teaching them how to read. Most of our kids know how to read. They can call words. They know what the words say, they might not know what they mean. We're reading to learn. They're not learning to read anymore, they're reading to learn. So if they're going to learn the information that's in these tough passages, they got to know how to read. So you're practicing using the content in your classroom. So you just got to find the text that's appropriate for your class. Have we left anything off, like teaching strategies that would address some of these difficulties?
Real practice, like maybe I should do some tests with the combination answers or.
So practice not only this type of reading, but also this type of test taking, is what you're saying. This type of reading and these type of questions. Absolutely. Because when y'all started looking at the questions, what were you noticing about the questions? Didn't you notice something about the questions?
It's like you can choose, I mean, there's always one obvious that's not correct, but then the ones that you have to kind of differentiate between, they don't have the skills to figure out which is the best.
And that's this high order thinking skill. So we've got to practice, and I think that as teachers we're pretty good at practicing a week or two before the test taking skills, and that's legitimate. We need to do that. But throughout the semester, we need to be showing them the kind of text they're going to encounter. It's that academic text, and it's this hard. Now we know not all of our kids are able to read at grade level, so we're going to talk about that. Newsela is a great tool to give them some text that's at their independent reading level. But I need y'all to understand something, it's this. No matter what level of reading your kids are on, and no matter how much work they do with SSR, self-selected reading, or any kind of differentiated reading you give them at their own level, we are not supposed to be denying them access to at-grade level material. We are supposed to be giving every student complex text at their grade level. And so because we know that not all of them are up there, we've got to scaffold as needed. And y'all think about scaffolding on a building. You put it up there to help support, but it doesn't stay up there forever. Scaffold's not supposed to be a crutch.
Would it be wise to advise kids, and I don't know if it's falls in one of those categories, to have them read the questions first?
It's a great idea. That's a great
Before they
strategy.
even read the passage, so they could maybe
Yeah.
shorten.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great
Especially with the
strategy.
time.
Mhm.
In class, you do have more time than on the SAT, SAT, you don't have that luxury.
And yes, it's extremely valid to do that. But I also think sometimes give them complex text that doesn't involve a test too. Because it's not always about answering questions. Sometimes it's to understand what this complex text is saying. But yes, we shouldn't throw out the test-taking strategies. So, the whole point of what the ACT has taught us, both in the study and just from us looking at the ACT, is that if students are going to access complex text, they can really understand it, they need practice, like you just said, deciphering complex text. They need to read to learn and not just learn to read, and we said that. And also, implication 2, students are not going to be prepared for college and careers if we keep substituting text. And it happens. We've got teachers who, well, first of all, they don't have enough textbooks, right? So that may be one of the reasons. But sometimes what we do is we say, those textbooks are too hard, my kids can't read that, so let me rewrite it in a simpler form for them. And we're very well-meaning when we do that. But when we do that, we've just taken away their practice with complex text. Well, what we need to do is keep that expectation up there, but scaffold. And finally, there is absolutely no research that says keeping a kid at his independent reading level and never allowing him access will help him grow. The research says the opposite, that in addition to kids working at their own independent reading level, they've got to see complex text in their, at their grade level. They have to, or they're not going to grow. There's research to back that up. Think about elementary school, where kids are either redbirds or bluebirds, or they're an M, a J, or a K reader. You don't want to keep them at that level and never let them grow. So what can you do? We've talked about this. We wrote it on the board. Read multiple times. Read sections multiple times, small sections. Get them to annotate. Let them practice at fluency, reading for long periods of time. Let them read aloud with another student. Sometimes it could be a better reader, and reading out loud with that student could be very helpful. Sometimes it could be two high flyers reading together and two struggling readers reading together. It doesn't always have to be opposite in skill. What we should not be doing is popcorn reading. Do y'all know popcorn reading? Or one kid reads and then another kid reads and then another kid reads. That is so taboo now, you never want to do that. There's just a lot of research out there about how it totally slows down comprehension for the rest of the kids, because you got bad readers reading out loud. So what's up? Unless you're working on oral skills, with reading, there's no reason to do that. We shouldn't be doing that. But reading out loud in partners is a good thing, because they're actually tackling skills together. But mostly we have to believe our kids are capable of accessing complex text, or we're never going to try it. What I want to share with you right now are the 3 shifts in instruction. You may have seen these before. That when those college and career-ready indicators were developed, this is a way of looking at how instruction has had to change. K-12. First of all, we're supposed to be helping kids build their content knowledge through content-rich text. So what that means is not just reading stories or poems or plays, which we still do in English class, but reading in science class some really tough technical scientific stuff, and reading primary documents in history class. And yes, even in PE and arts classes, sometimes reading in that content area. Not a waste of time reading, but reading in that content area. And that when we get kids to read, we should get them to reread and pull stuff from the text to use it as evidence. And that we should really be concentrating on the academic vocabulary they're seeing. Not just content vocabulary, but y'all remember academic vocabulary? Have we talked about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 before? Those tier 2 words are the words they'll see across content areas. Okay. Like analyze. So, how do you address those shifts all in one activity? You do some close reading. You do close reading in your class. So, could you guys turn and talk to each other very quickly? It could be somebody different than who you talked to before. What's close reading? Try to come up with a definition. Close reading. Go ahead. Close reading. Go.
if I was on.
And that's where you put your definition.
And then once I clicked on your little picture that popped up on the screen, then the chat window opened up.
I love it. I'm glad you didn't put, hey, I hate this.
I thought about this, but I didn't realize it was going, viral.
All right, that's awesome. No, I didn't know you could do that. Okay, so.
First thought when you said it was a private chat.
Yeah. This is Doug Fisher. I don't know if you guys have read any of his books or articles. He is an active high school teacher. He still teaches in California, but he also makes a bunch of money writing books, a lot of which we have in the library. This is his definition of close reading, and if you can't see it up there, you've got it in front of you on the presentation. See if you and your partner said what he said, or if he said something different. Did he add anything? Let's answer it all together. Do you guys see him saying something that did not come up in your discussion with a partner? Okay, so we're back up here. We're back together. Y'all need the timer. What are you noticing him saying, if anything, that did not come up in your definition with your partner?
Rereading.
People have said that every single period, that seems to be the new thing, is reading it and reading it and reading that same section over and over and over again. What that means is we can't be giving them huge long passages. I mean, if they're going to be rereading and learning that skill, it's going to be small chunks. So nobody's saying to go be reading novels. You know. Anything else? Okay, let me give you another quiz then. What did he say that reminds you of those 3 shifts? Do y'all remember those 3 shifts? So let me show them to you again real quick, okay? There's the shifts. Look at them. What did he say that came from those shifts? Did you say content?
Text-dependent question.
Yes, and he says evidence from the text, text-dependent questions. What else came from those shifts?
Complex reading.
The complexity that was in there. The over and over, the practice, doing it. Lots of practice, yes. Yeah, so, and he's right on. Anybody who defines close reading these days is saying exactly what he's saying, and it's a reflection of what the shifts are. So those shifts really, they apply to all of us guys, no matter what we teach. We should be doing more content-rich informational reading. We should be getting kids to use evidence from the text. Y'all, that's what those constructed, what do they call it? Constructed response test items are, is use evidence from the text. And we should be really focusing on academic vocabulary. Those are the shifts. And a really easy way to think about a close reading lesson, you know, how you can do close reading in your class, is just these 3 things. You take some text, you give to kids. First thing you say is, hey, look it over, read it. Just what's it say on the surface? What's it about? That's easy enough. Let them look at it and figure out what they think it's saying in general. Then get them to look at it a second time. Well, what does it mean? And that's when they dig a little deeper now that they've had the jumping in part. And they look at diction, and they look at tone, and they look for particular phrases that are important. And they find the main idea. Finally, you say, okay, look at it the 3rd time, maybe with a partner, maybe here's where you write a little bit. What's it matter? Why does it even matter? In the large scope of things and what we're studying, why does this matter? So that's just it. That's like, duh. What's it say? What's it mean? And why does it even matter? That's it. That's a close reading lesson. And if you have time, you can check one. I've got one that happens to be in English there, but I've adapted it for lots of different classes. And that's essentially what they did. I used it in drama recently. It doesn't have to be an English class to do a close read. It can be informational text. So, we're going to try it. If you will go back to the Weebly, this article is there, and you can pull it up. It's called The Struggle Struggle Over Struggle. If you don't want to read this article on the Weebly, I've got some copies right here. But guys, just skim over it. I'm giving you 3 minutes. Just skim over it to figure out what it's saying. That's all you got to do. Okay? Who needs a...
What was it called?
The Struggle Over Struggle?
Sorry, it's only 4 kids.
Y'all, we're practicing doing close reading. If you were doing that with kids, you would never have given them an article that long, okay? You would have given them a chunk to read, okay? But just because of time, we're kind of like, trying out parts of it. So that was the first part. That was you jumping in just to figure out what it was about, and I gave you no background. Doesn't mean we never do pre-activities. It doesn't mean that at all. But you don't give so much background that they don't even need to read it. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to do something called a text rendering strategy. And you could write anywhere you want to, but I do have index cards if you want them. Go back to your, I'm going to say to your chunk, but it's actually your whole article because y'all are grown-ups. And find a sentence, find a phrase, and find a word that you think gets to the heart of what this article is really, really about. And write those down. I can give you 3 different note cards. You can write it where you want. So you tell me. A sentence, a phrase, and a word. I would give my kids note cards because then they don't feel like they're having to write a whole lot. A sentence, a phrase, and a word. And the directions are up here. The same sentence, they don't have to be at all. So you guys just finished step 2. You did step 1 where you just read to see what it was about. That was step 2 where you went back and looked, you read again, and you looked for text evidence to support what the text was saying. Now we're getting ready for step 3, and there's lots of different strategies. We're just doing one today, okay? This is called text rendering. Now you're going to meet with, your kids doing this, okay? You're going to meet with another couple of people, and you guys are, when you meet, are going to take turns. One person shares his sentence and tells why he picked it. The next person shares her sentence and why she picked it. The next person shares her sentence. It's a speaking and listening, okay? Then you do another round with the phrase and another round with the word. Are we good? So this one's going to take movement. You literally need to get out of your chair and go find a group of 3 or so somewhere else in the room. You've got 3 minutes. Go. Small group. You don't have enough time for big groups. You gotta keep it small.
I said, without any training, but it's in the file. You gotta do it. It's a fine line. So that's what I did.
You don't pay for it.
Mine was the exact same thing, but it was false, which was the struggle isn't necessarily good thing, but it's also not necessarily very good. Like nuance, learning to read and write it.
The one with the question is, what's the way of
Where's yours?
I had my learning to read is like learning to swim.
Okay, so did y'all share your sentence? Okay, have you shared your phrase yet? And then your word?
Now we're doing phrase.
Mine is the right amount of struggle.
The same thing, the struggle part. The struggle isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Now with kids need variety, which is all one word.
Oh, I went with struggle.
Cool. And I'll tell the rest of the classes, I think with more time, I would have students write down their reasoning on the back and probably share that too. So it gets them thinking more, writing more.
And I'll give them a test. The tests are incredibly complex. And I'll don't try to answer a question right now unless you know what it is. So ask them. And they're getting better. No one would ever ask before. They would ask you what words they would have known. And the last test, Z came up. And the word Z. And they were like, what does that mean? And when I explained it to them, they're like, oh, yeah, you mean the sun. Yes. And because it was out of context, they didn't place it. But that one word was the absolute key to the question. And the kid who didn't know that word and tried to guess at the question was in trouble. The kid who took the time to ask what that word meant, it was an easy question.
That's what our
But it was out of context word. They could see the general chemistry science classes, but when it showed up out of
Okay, so guys, you can tell for time we're kind of rushing through things, but let's talk about that protocol. First of all, it's a close reading protocol. It makes a kid reread. It makes them find text evidence. Secondly, it's a literacy strategy because kids are moving, they're speaking. Yeah, with more time, and if I were in the classroom, I would have had you turn that card over if you were a student and write your reason for why you picked each one. I would have given you 3 index cards, and I'd say, put your word on one, your sentence on another, your phrase on another, and on the back, write your thinking about it. I would have done that, because they need that practice. When they write, they have to think in order to write. But we didn't do that because we're grown-ups in here. But just so you know how it's used in the classroom. That forces people to look at text if they've got to render text evidence from it to talk about it. That's a quick strategy. What are you thinking about? That strategy. You've done this before. Is this one you've done? You've done single lesson. Any thoughts about this strategy?
Don't worry, it's his mama.
Well, it's Cane Creek Middle School. Hang on. Hello? Yes.
Are we dismissing
Can
it?
we go then?
Hey, the rule is teacher leave, teacher leave.
Right? That's what I said, it's in the rules.
It's in the rules.
I know, right? You on yours. I'm gonna take a picture. I'm gonna show my mom.
All right, everybody stand up. Let's do a brain break. Stand up. Stand up.
Brain break.
I don't know what the given was for you, but we can go to the PowerPoint. It is.
No.
So what's the end of this? We'll just do it. All right, Megan's gonna show us the end of the presentation.
Sorry, it was the nurse at my school, at my kid's school. Here we go.
She okay?
Oh, it is a great.
Thank you for picking it on. Yeah, what does this mean? Have you guys heard of the gradual release of responsibility model? It's the scaffolding, guys. We need to give our students scaffolding. We need to have them do text rendering and other types of activities. But we need to teach them to do that eventually up here so that by the time they leave us at Roberson, they aren't needing to do that anymore. They're doing it intuitively. You know, we're not having to give them something. We talked a little bit about Newsella today. Again, the Newsella scaffolded articles at different grade levels are fantastic. Just make sure you don't keep your kids at those levels and never let them see the grade level text. Joy talked last time about maybe doing a little portion of that grade level text with the kids after they've had it at their own independent. Deep diving into text, the kind that this article is about and the kind that we just did, the kind that we're talking about with the ACT report, you can't do it every day. I've got math to teach, you've got history to teach. You're not going to be close reading every day. Our English teachers aren't necessarily close reading every single solitary day. They've got writing and vocab and so forth and so on. When you deep dive in real life, you get the bends if you do it too often. So just keep that in mind. It's a little visual for you to think about. There are, though, some things you can do with complex text when you do it. Just doing it more often than we are right now would be great, because there are some classes where they're not really reading complex text. This book is awesome. We have it in the library. We're ordering 5 more today because it's missing from our library. It must be that good. But I wanted to show you that on the Weebly, if y'all go back to the Weebly, keep losing it. If you go back to the Weebly, hit the little thing that says how to read like detectives, and see what pops up. Don't you love that? Here it is. It's over here. This is the coolest thing, y'all. These are actual 40 different strategies for close reading. And you can run them off, and you can cut them up, and you can put like a little binder clip in there. And I want to just let you look at one of them as an example. And you can pull a different one than me. I'll just put one on the screen here. I'll put the zoom in strategy. It's strategy 3. Let me just let you read over this so you can get an example of another close reading strategy. Strategy look familiar? The lit team's actually shared it with you before. Is it looking familiar to some of you? know, visuals are text. A picture is text. You can stick one up at the beginning of the period, reveal parts of it, and each time you reveal a little bit more, you're asking your kids to analyze more. That's what they're supposed to do with text. Chunk it, analyze a little bit, and move on. So you can practice that strategy with a visual. So this is only 1 out of 40 close reading strategies. Right out of a book by Doug Fisher. We looked at his definition before. He wrote the book, How to Read Like a Detective. And then North Carolina's DPI took his strategies and some others and threw them together in this thing that you can run off. They charge money, like $7, and you can get nice laminated ones, or you can just take this teachers and run them off and cut them up. But anyway, I think they're neat, and so they are there for you on the Weebly. And I just wanted to talk about 2 more strategies that I think you guys are probably going to recognize. We've talked about them before, but I just wanted to remind you about them as close reading strategies. And one of them is called Say Something. Let me bring up the directions. So let's look at this one. You just have some text you give to your kids, and you ask them to read in partners, side by side, because reading side by side in partners is okay. And one partner reads a chunk, and then he stops and he says something about that chunk of text to his partner. How does he know what to say? You give him some sentence starters, okay? And those sentence starters help him make inferences or connections, or ask questions. Or they might ask him to just summarize. So eventually the kids don't need the sentence starters at all. They get so used to this activity if you do it. Then partner B reads a little bit and summarizes or questions or infers. Then they start reading the next pattern. You see what I'm saying? They just take turns reading together. Obviously, kids don't get to read together on the ACT or the course tests. But what they've just done is practice what good readers do in their own heads. They stop and they talk to themselves about what they're reading. It's a great strategy, and you can ask me. I will give you some sentence starters in your own content area, or you can Google it and you'll see some. Okay? Any questions about Say Something? Renee, have you used this strategy? Do you have anything to add, or did you do anything differently?
Well, after a while, they don't need the starters because they just know what to ask.
Which is
So here's
awesome.
what I noticed about this or whatever.
Yes.
The kids like it pretty much.
Okay, good. That's the beauty of it when they don't need the sentence starters anymore. Have y'all ever asked your kids to do a turn and talk and they have nothing to say to each other? Sentence starters are beautiful for that. That's all this is. It's just a turn and talk about text. Eventually they get into the habit and they know how to dialogue about text. So here's Save the Last Word for B, and I'll get Megan to explain it. We have shared this with you before, but here's a reminder.
I had my kids read an article while they were reading. They each had an index card, and they were in a group of 4. They write down a sentence from this article, or 2 or 3 that was kind of striking to them, whether it made them feel something, whether it was the big picture, just something that was meaningful about it. And then the first person reads their sentence aloud, and then they are done speaking for the moment. The second person responds to that quote, and he or she is done talking. The third person then responds to the quote, and then done talking. Fourth person responds to the quote, and they are done talking. You don't go back and have a constant dialogue, but it's just one person getting their turn to talk, and then the person who initially read their quote goes back and kind of gets to respond to everybody. So they have a last word on this, on their sentence that they wrote, and they get the last word and kind of tie everything together for them and build on each person's comments they made. So it gives every kid a chance to speak because we know they all don't like to speak. And so this way everybody does have a turn to talk and share their opinion.
Thanks. That was a good explanation. Yeah, they're in small groups, so they feel better about talking. Plus, when you do a protocol like this, hey, here's how it's going to go. Person A talks, then B, then C, then they're going to be compelled to talk more likely. And the others have to listen to them because that's the way the game is played. That's the protocol. This one's online. It's great for getting kids to move. Megan had her kids get up and move like you guys did today with the text rendering process. To do Say the Last Word for Me, it's reading, it's writing, it's speaking. But I guess most importantly to today, and what we're learning today, is it forces students to take a second look at text, to dig in and use text evidence, to read it again. And then when they talk about it, they're into that third step why does it matter? Remember, what's it about? Or what's it say? What's it about? And why does it matter? So we're at the end. I've shared lots more strategies with you before. Our lit team has too. Today was more about why do we even need to be reading hard stuff? Not just to be reading, but reading hard stuff. And what's the implication? And how does that change test scores? And what do we need to be doing